Hi, here are a few different techniques that we've been using in geography to help improve the confidence of students and therefore hopefully their results. One way is using the acronym of DEAL to help them decipher some of the complex graphs and charts that are used throughout the papers, particularly in paper 3. So the idea of being given a resource and describing it, explaining it, picking out anomalies and linking it back to the question for low mark tariff questions, and then using them to be able to summarise them in some of the longer answer questions, gives them a focus for what to do. Here you can see it also can be applied to maps as well. We also found that it's useful when students can be potentially bamboozled or struggle with more complex graphs. If they have the acronym in their mind, it focuses them rather than panicking that they don't know what they're doing. Another technique we've been using, particularly with the assess the extent questions, is helping pupils understand the idea of a continuum. So the idea that to help you get the maximum number of marks, you need to think about the question going from one extreme to another and whereabouts you could place your points along the continuum to get a variety of points across rather than being too simplistic. We also find that this is coming up more and more at GCSE and EdExcel, so trying to use this or beginning to use this at GCSE would hopefully help them when it comes to the A-level questions.
Mapping strategies really help students to memorise patterns and trends within a text and allow them to come to very sound, convincing AO1 conclusions about what truths or theories are being posed about life within the text. We studied Twelfth Night at Heston for aspects of comedy AQA, and what students could do if they had a question about whether love was optimistic or pessimistically presented by Shakespeare is they could chart the examples of where love seems convincing and happy, or where love seems cynical and exploitative, or where love seems selfless, or where love seems selfish, and then come to their own conclusions. And it allows them to move away from reliance on micro quotes, and also allows them to stop worrying about memorising every line of the play because it's a closed text exam. When you first get students to do generic type questions, obviously you're going to do that front of class teaching where you help them to decode the question, but you can then get them in groups to take responsibility for thinking through the question. So you might get the lower ability students to find the examples of cruelty and dishonesty, the mid-ability students to find examples of the opposite, and the higher ability students to apply theories, see whether the ideas in the critical anthology lend themselves to the patterns that are on the page. Scattergrams, scattergraphs are useful for charting effects on audience. Students can look at things like, for example, sympathy, how it's distributed or manipulated throughout the play. For example, Malvolio, our feelings change towards him. We don't like him at the start of the play when he's demeaning and pompous, but by the end of the play we feel quite sorry for him. He's been verbally abused, mocked and kind of disposed of. The interplay of different generic elements or ingredients of a genre is also something AQA want more able students and C grade students to be able to comment on in their essays, because they might be asked the extent to which a genre is dominated by a particular ingredient. Students can list incidents of different generic elements within an act and compile bar charts such as these, the measurements really being represented by how many incidents of that certain kind of comedy happen within each act. These mapping strategies can be used with any of the exam papers by AQA, the crime, the social and political, the tragedy, the comedy. Lastly, these very social, collaborative, low stakes kind of tasks are fun for students in the run up to the exams, and they allow you to gauge the gaps and misconceptions.
This is just a quick kind of revision tip on how I would revise with my Year 13 A-level historians. So I would be revising Russian dictatorship, chapter 24, which is kind of like the international relationship. So I'd start with maybe just a quick kind of do now based on vocab, and then I'd go just over it. But then what I do is I apply kind of this face revision material lesson, which we do at Logic, which focuses on facts and then applying those facts into context, connecting with different topics, and then an exam style question. So very briefly, I actually would normally start with then a big kind of question, which is the exam question that I want them to be able to answer at the end. And then I would start to be thinking about the different facts that they might need to know for it. And I'd normally use a bit of an oracy task maybe here to start to think about the key facts that they would need to know in order to answer this question. I'd then go on to maybe getting more facts from them, particularly because it's A-level. So thinking here about maybe a timeline for them to start putting things into place. Then what I would be doing is starting to apply it to the actual essay question. So thinking there, like, what are the headlines? What are your 3 main topics going to be for the essay? And then what I would do is I actually had, this was quite nice, I had a different type of essay, so same topic but different worded essay already written, and what I wanted them to do then is like steal some of the facts from that and help connect between different types of question even on the same topic. And then finally, I would break down then a different question. So I started with one and then I end with a slightly different one, because I think half of their problem is getting really stuck in what one question could be and then trying to adapt to the question. So that is how I would do my revision lessons for Year 13. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Tom Williamson, one of the Key Stage 5 teachers at Gumley House. Just want to go through something that I'm thinking of using, which is the exemplar report, exemplar answers and examiner reports produced by our examining body Edexcel. So a quick idea is students to complete an exam question under exam conditions, self-assess using the mark scheme, and then if available they can use review and mark one of the or more of the exemplar answers, and then see the differences between questions like here, which look incredibly similar, but actually one gets you 3 and one gets you 6 marks. Even on the face of it, they look incredibly similar, and it goes through what they can do, and then we can go through the examiner's report with them to model, the difficulty of the question and some common misconceptions. They can think about what misconceptions they have themselves. So this is a nice, easy way to get exemplar answers, which both you and the students can go through.
So this resource is for our economists. We have divided the PowerPoint into 4 slides, and each slide has all the diagrams that a child would need to know in order to pass the exam successfully. So we've summarised underneath a little bit of what each diagram means. It's just a nice, concise way for children to have the diagrams they need in one place, theme by theme, so they can see them and then perhaps do their recall, cover them, do them on the whiteboard themselves and check against it as well. Students have really benefited and enjoyed using these slides. So another resource students have enjoyed over the years has been recall questions. So we have a list of recall questions for, again, lots and lots of different topics, in fact all topics in economics. These are low-level AO1 questions, but they help students to make sure that their knowledge is consolidated before they attempt exam questions. And the nature of the questions the detail that you need in order to answer these questions and actually help you build your AO3 as well. So again, another resource that has been very popular among students and helped us achieve successful results.
Hi, this is Manon and Juliette from Gumley. We're going to talk to you about ChatGPT with A-level students and how you can maximize the use of this AI, this artificial intelligence with your students.
So we found out that one of our students was using it because her essays were really good, like really, really good. So after a while, we did ask her and she admitted using ChatGPT. So we thought, after a month of actually marking the robot, we might actually use it.
Yes. So if you're not familiar with ChatGPT, it's an AI and it's free. You could need to register it. And the idea is that they find all the information on the web in a language that you type the information, what you're looking for in. So it's a bit like a massive Google search, but it will create an essay or it will literally write the essay
on anything.
Un sac de billes?
On anything, you can do it in English, in French, in all different languages, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, we only tried French, haven't we?
Yeah, we only tried in French, but it's amazing. So what we've done is we kind of looked at how we can use it and teach the student to use it for their own development. So if you we type les grèves en France because that's the new topic that we're doing with the year 13 at the moment, and we just typed on ChatGPT les grèves en France, and that was the first thing that came up. So we thought, okay, great, let's do this for translation with the dice. So it's like un dé, un stylo. So they just do the competition and we teach them the keywords. But it's a nice way to do a bit of translation into English. That's the one that they struggle quite a lot in the paper one. So we use that as way of translation. Mm-hmm. And we also use it for the essay.
Yeah. So for example, here we just typed into the chat essai sur l'analyse des personnages dans la haine, and it just came up with that. So clearly we have something about each different character. So we can also use it to include it into the essay. So what we are trying to do is tell our students to use it to research one point, but obviously not to type the whole thing, otherwise there's no point, right? So we are just telling them that they can research one bullet point, and then they have 1 point to add to their essay.
And also, if you research things about the psychology of the characters, there are some analysis that has been done with academic papers that we probably have never thought about. And the idea is to guide the students in an independent study to research in English about different things or the book or the film, and make notes and mind map everything, and actually then use those research into then writing the essay for themselves. Because what we don't want is for them to not be able to do anything in the whole. So it's just basically being clever and beat the robot. So hopefully you can beat the robot too with your students.
Hopefully.
Enjoy GPT.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So, my top revision tip for A-level maths, I'm a big fan of games around revision. One of my favourite games is Scategories, the idea that students can make lists of information and score points if they manage to get down information that nobody else managed to achieve. It's a great thing to go away and do, and applies to many, many different topic areas. So I run this in the class first of all by getting the students to spend 2 minutes writing down everything they know about a topic. So this was set up around trigonometry. After they've then done that, rather than choosing a sort of scoring system, I then get the students to go around the classroom and speak to another member of the class about what they've got on their list, and they make comparisons between their two lists. And the key thing here is that anything that somebody's got that they haven't, they then need to add to their list. Then they get up, they move around again, and they go and speak to somebody else in the classroom, and they do exactly the same thing for another minute period, trying to elongate that list. So the idea here is that everybody's got different thoughts about the subject area, and you try to elicit from everybody what they see as the main topics of focus. Once the students have then got these lists, the next thing I do is then introduce them to the specification to then get them to tick off the specification in accordance with their list. So this is then a way of them checking to make sure that they've got absolutely every topic area covered, and we go through and we talk about the specification really being there for teachers, but it is a nice useful checklist of absolutely everything that they need to know, and more thorough than any textbook would be. Finally, we then go into an exam question. So this is an exam question I've got set up here purposefully with lots of white space above the question and around the question. Because one of the things that I like to encourage the students to do in exams is to make notes around the edges of their questions. So for instance, in this case here, we're then relating it back to the topic areas that we've discovered. So we're talking about harmonic functions in this case. So that's something that I'd want the students to write down. I'd want them to make a recognition here that the angles are in radians. So that's something that they're making sure that they're doing. All of those sorts of topic areas get noted down onto the question so that if they've got no idea where to start, they've at least narrowed down the topic area that they're thinking about. And that's my tip for revising A-level maths.
A revision strategy we've been using for A-level biology at Heston is structured oracy tasks. These are really good for AO1 recall consolidation, where you have lots and lots of information that students need to memorise and specific terminology, and they would need to know a sequence of events. So I would get the students to memorise the information, perhaps 5 minutes in the lesson, or it could be a homework beforehand. You would then have strategic pairing. I normally do a stronger student and a weaker student together. And then they would verbally explain without using their notes, and their partner would peer assess and tick off as they mention the points, and then they get a score at the end. And then they need to repeat this, so potentially immediately if they've struggled, but it could be at the end of the lesson or the following week or the following month, over and over. So we have one on the synapse here, another on the transmission of action potentials, and a third one on blood glucose control. I really like this task because the students find it so engaging. It is their favourite, is the one they always ask for, and they get really competitive with it as well. As a teacher, I think it is really excellent at gaining that insight into the depth of the student's understanding. You can identify misconceptions really easily and then address them immediately. I think it's probably best for lower ability students, so those students on grade E to C that are still struggling with their AO1 recall. So the real limitation of this is for your more able students. You are going to need to have a more challenging extension task available. I would normally put an AO2 application question on the board, usually about an unknown drug or an unknown disease that's linked with the topic.